From Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
the Republican candidate for governor.
Have sexual relations with
I realize that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, Cleveland. Welcome back to Backfire. We've been gone a couple of weeks and missed everyone, haven't we? Missed you guys. It's been gone 2 weeks. We've just gotten to miss each other.
You know, the weather just felt like we needed a break.
I guess the weather did. Speaking of the bad weather, it looks like things are really stirring up bad down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. On the front page of the Times this morning, Volkswagen tension builds. Big United Auto Workers billboard down there said the UAW spends millions to elect liberal politicians, including Barack Obama. Then it's got a big cross out United Auto, crossing out the auto, and it's got Obama's name in the place. What do you think about this guy? We're going to have a union down there or not?
Well, that's going to be, if there's going to be a closed election as was requested, as I understand
I mean,
it.
that's what us conservatives have always asked for. Give us an election. You know, I may not like it if they vote UAW in. I think it'll be a gigantic mistake, but I'll live with it. The union didn't want to allow the workers the right to vote. And surprisingly, our Democratic government employees and our Democratic elected officials agree that workers shouldn't have a secret ballot right. They've tried every way in the world to avoid it.
Seems like Volkswagen's really been pushing this. Do you think
there's a works count?
Volkswagen has a model for how they handle employee relations, and they would like to mirror it here in the United States.
And by the way, that model is failing in Germany just like the union model is failing here. The union memberships in Germany have actually plummeted. Now, they're still about twice. They're over 20% what our union membership here in the United States is, but it's been falling there as well.
They don't have a traditional union model in Germany.
That's why it's not falling quite as fast, because they haven't done as much damage as the UAW.
But basically it means that they've got a group inside the plant involving employees who help them make managerial decisions about how the company goes forward.
And actually, people like Senator Corker didn't have a problem with that concept. The problem is there's a federal law that the Democrats pushed through to make sure the UAW was protected that said if you were going to have a works council, it had to be the United Auto Workers. Now, that sounds fair, doesn't it, folks?
Why did it have to be the United?
Because the UAW spends hundreds of millions of dollars on Democrat candidates, just like that billboard said, and the Democrat elected officials turn around and protect the UAW.
United Obama Workers, that's what the sound said.
And that's a fact. I don't know why anybody would be mad at that billboard. It's a fact.
Yeah, it was an interesting comment that the people who put that up said that the unionization of Volkswagen was, quote, a threat to our Southern culture, whatever that means.
It's the right to work culture is what it means, Franklin.
Well,
why do you think all of these companies have moved south? Because of right to work
What's
laws.
interesting is that Tennessee has had the largest increase in union participation of any state in America in the last 10 years.
Because people aren't too bright sometimes. They get something and then they don't realize why they got it, and then they vote to kill the
or, as you've pointed out, all these jobs have been brought in so they could be paid substandard wages.
Substandard wages, Franklin. They paid great wages in Detroit, didn't it? How'd that work out for them?
Well, with poor management, it worked out poorly.
It's now a disaster zone. And people up there's entire lives have been destroyed because of union wages that were out of step with what, let me think about it, the economy could afford.
Well, that disruption occurred because of the poor management of the company.
Democratic policies for 40 years. The Democrats have been in charge of Detroit
Democrats
for decades.
We're not responsible for the management of GM.
Actually, you are now, Franklin, because we bought it.
Actually, we no longer own those things.
Actually, if you want to go down that road, Franklin, we lost tens of billions of dollars, and that's not even counting the kickbacks on the taxes that Obama gave GM.
What we
that
got
was a disaster.
Was millions of jobs saved.
Franklin, you wouldn't have lost those jobs anyway. Another company that manages better would have bought the assets and would have reopened just like Fiat.
Nobody
Franklin,
believes that's true.
That's what happened to Fiat in Germany.
Everybody does.
That's exactly what happened to Fiat in Germany.
So now you're touting Germany as the way to go.
No, I'm touting capitalism. I know you liberals don't believe in it, but it's what's lifted the entire world out of poverty.
Saved is just a fact.
You know, Franklin, it's very difficult to prove, and all this president has is a negative that he proves. Well, it would have been worse. Well, I saved this job. Well, how do you know you saved that job? Well, it didn't go away, so I guess I must have saved it.
Hey, Franklin, the last time we were on the air, you made a comment, and I meant to record that off the deal there.
Now look, we can't be recording things.
A Democrat can't be held to what he says.
Hey, President Obama did not bow to anybody.
Right.
All right, here's some pictures right here. Now, I just
he
want
was
to have
tying his shoe, I'm sure.
No,
he just stumbled.
Wait a minute. There's one he's been all the way over. I thought he was about to wipe his rear end.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, he's going to the Saudi king's rear end probably.
But anyway, I just thought I'd bring those pictures and show them to you.
Does that look like bowing to you, Franklin?
Well, one of those 6 pictures does. The rest don't now.
Well, you said he never bowed it at all.
Yes, it's like the pictures where that went around the internet for a year saying that he wouldn't put his hand over his heart during the national anthem.
Because there were pictures where he didn't.
Yeah, except that there were pictures taken 4 seconds later where his hand was over his heart. But that was somehow proof
Franklin,
that he didn't do it.
If you'd like, I'll bring you video during the campaign in 2007 when he stood up there the entire time while even Hillary put her hand over his heart, and he never put his hand over his heart.
Do you think there's going to be video 100 different times of him having his hand over his heart?
Well, Franklin, here's
the question.
Here's how weird and patriotic I am. Put your hand over your heart every time. There should never be one picture of someone running to be the commander-in-chief of our country without his hand over his heart.
The point being, John,
that he didn't put his hand over his heart.
Yeah, but that wasn't the point of that series of pictures. It was to question his patriotism.
I do question his patriotism.
And that's what's wrong with America.
No,
Your
it's
party
not. That's
actually
what's wrong
believes
with him.
that kind of nonsense.
Franklin, he's the leader of the free world.
You
the
believe that the elected
chief
president of the United States
ought to put his
doesn't
hand
love
over his
his
heart.
country.
But
that's the kind of crazy stuff that sends your party off the cliff.
Franklin,
that's the reason they're losing these elections, because it's so crazy.
You know what, Franklin? What you believe used to matter in this country. And a president who doesn't think it's important. We've got veterans, Franklin, in wheelchairs that will struggle to stand up and put their hand over their heart for the national anthem. And you're saying that man couldn't do it once.
How do you get from a picture that one day one guy didn't do one thing compared to hundreds of other times he did?
Because
that means he doesn't care.
Because I expect him to do it every time.
Okay. Well,
I expect it every time, and that's how unreasonable I am. I expect him to do it every time.
I would suggest that there's about a 98% chance that whatever video you saw has been cooked up and has no validity whatsoever.
Well, you know what, Franklin, if that's the case...
Because I see that stuff constantly from everybody on the right.
If that's the case, it was put together by Hillary's people, because that's where it came from. By the way, Franklin, all of the lawsuits about his not being a U.S. citizen, Hillary's people, not Republicans.
Hillary's people.
The main lawsuit, the first lawsuit, was filed by the former Assistant Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania. He's a lifelong Democrat, ran for office as a Democrat, and was a Hillary Clinton supporter. He was the lead counsel that filed the first lawsuit and the main lawsuit that continued for years.
So what you mean is he got hired by somebody?
No, he didn't get hired at all. I'm telling you, it was Hillary's people that brought that whole thing up.
There's something new going on around town, Franklin. A new drug test is about to be screened around town. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
What's going on?
Well, it turns out that Bradley County government got audited, and we have it was determined that we were paying some workers as contract labor as opposed to employees because they didn't really meet the definition of contract labor. And that's okay. That's things that employers do all the time to try and avoid some tax liability if they can. But the result of that has been a determination that because of our drug-free workplace rules, that in the upcoming elections, the workers who work even one day, the little old ladies, if you will, who are working at the polling places, who just work one day every election cycle, they're all going to have to take drug tests as part of their employment.
Now, did the federal government require that?
No. That's a local decision that's been made.
The sheriff's department didn't require it, did it?
No, not the sheriff's department.
Okay,
As I understand it, it's a decision from the mayor's county mayor's
That's
office.
right. That's right.
So now let me. I always try to be fair on these things. The government, the big government, is the problem here for coming in and saying that these workers, who a lot of them only work one day. If you work early voting, you may work a couple of weeks, but most of these people work one day on election day. That's the big problem for them to require them to be treated as employees. But to compound that on the local level and turn around and say, because you're sitting there monitoring the poll at Lee University, you're going to have to pee in a cup.
Let me go back just a minute. This started because the county had been paying these people
as contract labor,
independent labor,
which means you give them a check and you don't do any withholding.
That's right. That's right. And now the government comes back in and says that they should have taken taxes out on these people.
Well, the government wants their cut.
Well, there are defined rules.
I mean, couldn't we send them a form showing how much income they made?
You're missing the point. The government wants their money.
They did do that. They did do that.
But the point is, the government wants their money.
No, they do that. These employees have been getting what's called a 1099.
Sure. What's wrong with that?
Well, the law, and this is not a new law. This is old. It's even the law in the state of Tennessee, not just a federal law, is what's the definition of an independent contractor versus what's an employee.
Right.
And it has a lot of implications for it. Who's supposed to be covered by workers' compensation, for example? If they're an employee, you're supposed to cover them. If they're independent contractors, you're not. If you hire a plumber to come to your house to do some work at your house, he brings his own tools. He decides how he's going to do the work. He just gets the thing done you wanted. That's an independent contractor.
Franklin, let me interject here. Yeah. This is an area where I've talked about this before. This is where the government getting involved actually picks winners and losers and favors people. That law on the independent contractors. If you're a building contractor, even though the plumber is a separate business, now you as the contractor are responsible for that plumber who's a separate business. Even though he's separate, he works under you on the main contract. You're responsible for him to make sure he has workers' comp. Now, the problem with that is the big builders pushed that. And the state said, oh, well, the Builders Association was okay with this. The problem with it was the big builders employ their own subs. They own the subs. So they already had this. So what did it do? It put the small contractors, the small builders, at a competitive disadvantage. So what happens? The government gets involved. It picks a winner, the big contractors, over the little contractors.
Well, and then,
and that's why the government ought to stay out of our economy as much as they can.
But for the record, let's make that clear. That's a state decision that's been
made
by the Republican
But the point
administration.
is, Franklin, it doesn't matter whether it's local government, state government, or federal government. All governments grow. They're like viruses. They replicate, they grow, and you either keep them in check or they will destroy the host body.
All right, let me look at this from another angle. The 1099 was something that was been doing for years with contract laborers.
Well, keep in mind, folks, think about this on a practical level. One day every 2 to 4 years, we need a bunch of people working the polls, and they're the neighbors in that poll. They have to be, they're supposed to be from that precinct. They don't have to be, and sometimes they do have to move people, but they try to be. They used to be your granddad or the school crossing guard.
Volunteers, most of them.
And it's one day's work. This is just government being ridiculous.
It is kind of ridiculous. Anyway, the 1099, I want to go back to that, even with other laborers and other jobs, like you said, the subcontractors. There's a lot of subcontractors out there that can do some work for people, but now it's getting to a point you can't hire them and send them a 1099 anymore. You're liable to get have the government come down on you. I mean, what's going on with the new laws?
This is not a new law. There's no change in the law.
It's happened over the last couple of years.
It's a new interpretation.
No, it's not. This has been the interpretation in the state of Tennessee all these years. It's the exact same definition about what constitutes an employee versus an independent contractor.
But our point is they've now said, oh, we're going to include these people in that definition because they don't bring a notebook or they don't bring their tools. The point is, Franklin, we used to have some common sense on implementing these laws. And that's where we get into on the federal level, Franklin. Sometimes it's not the law, it's the unelected bureaucracy that enforces the law.
That's right.
But I will have to say, on a local level, if we could not make these little ladies and little men pee in a cup for a drug test, that
is a purely local decision.
That's a local decision.
What happens if they volunteer their time? They don't have to pee in a cup, right?
They're not being employed at that point.
Yeah, but I will tell you that the way the legal system works, so that creates problems too. Because when they volunteer their time, then you have a liability umbrella problem.
Sure, you got some problems there.
Mm-hmm. Insurance-wise.
Well, liability-wise. They're not...
Sure. I mean, they're there as your agent doing what you want them to do.
Right.
In fact, you say they volunteered. That wouldn't necessarily free you up from being responsible for things that they might do wrong.
Insurance-wise.
I mean,
lawsuits-wise.
I mean, understand something. Almost every employee, if they could, would pay every employee as contract labor. Mm-hmm. If you could. That didn't mean it would be a good thing. That's just this is not a change. This just happens to be something that came in. It didn't affect a lot of people. There's about 200 employees total affected by this, and the vast majority of those are the folks like John mentioned who work one day.
It's not a change in the law. It's a change in the implementation of the law. It's like if you thought Obamacare was bad enough at thousands of pages, the implementation manuals are millions of pages. That's the real problem.
Commission OK schools, liquor tax funds pursuit.
Yay, we're going to have another lawsuit where the taxpayer pays on both ends of it.
There just seems to be a lot of gridlock going on here. And who is the county attorney?
The county attorney is Crystal Freiberg.
Okay. So how did Mr. Logan get involved in it?
It's my understanding. Crystal, first of all, works primarily in an advisory capacity. And so when there is actual litigation against the county on other than just collection of property taxes, that sort of thing, she is not the person who does it.
But
so
that
is
completely within the commission's authority, and Crystal is an excellent attorney, and I'm sure could handle anything the commission and the mayor's office wanted to authorize her to do.
Sure.
But it seems to me like, I was reading this article and it said that the cities basically looked into everything. The states told them there's nothing wrong. Now then, Mr. Logan says it is not right. It wasn't calculated right. It's a school board matter. The school board's authorized basically to try to set up a meeting. The city said that they would meet with them on a certain day and canceled it, and now they're scheduling it for another day. But I don't know. There's a threat of this lawsuit. Why are we threatening lawsuits at this point in time? I mean, they haven't even talked about this as two different entities that are involved with the city and the county. I don't care if it is county schools. It's city and county school taxes that we're paying now, funds that we're paying. So why are we talking about suing ourselves before we even sit down and really discuss this?
Because it's always about the money with government. they always want more money. Not only do they want more money, but they want someone else's money. So if one government, when you talk about parity, they'll talk about parity between the county and the city expenditures. Well, guess what? The reason you decide to live in a city is because you want a higher level of services, and you are charged a higher level of taxes for that. So if you come back and you say, hey, the county ought to be paying equal to the city, that's a violation of the whole concept of a city. You're in a city to pay higher taxes to have more services. You're in the county to avoid more taxes, and you are willing to accept a little lower level of service for that.
Now, there's something that goes along with this, talking about one school system versus two school systems. I mean,
there's a statute that implies, at least, that you share one portion of the money with the county if you do not operate your own school system, but that you share a lesser amount if you do. That's the interpretation that the city's relying upon. The folks in the county disagree with that interpretation.
Well, I mean, does it not? Which one makes sense to you, Franklin?
Well, the argument is that there are two statutes involved that seem to contradict each other.
Wait a minute. Either it's we've got one school system or we've got two. That's what it boils down to. Am I right or wrong?
That's right, we do.
So what's the conflict? What's the problem here? Why can't they figure out how the money's split?
I guess the theory is that some of the money is being paid by county residents who come into the city and make purchases on, in this case, alcoholic beverages in restaurants and so forth, and that some of that money should flow back out into the county. Well, some of it did flow back out into the county. The question is whether enough flowed back out in the county. What gets lost in that discussion is that everybody in the city is in the county already.
Yeah.
So they're, in effect, the folks in the city are spending money, and a portion of their money is going out into the county school fund for schools that they're not going to benefit from. So that's the other side of the coin.
Let me solve this for them, okay? Why don't the city government and the county government do like Mayor Pennington did down in Dalton, Georgia? Cut their budgets 10%, do what people like Adam Lowe have suggested, and prioritize your budget. You do the zero-based budgeting. See what's important. Schools will be top of the important list. So let's cut our spending. If we weren't spending every dime that we got, we wouldn't be groveling on the ground for every penny we can grab.
We wouldn't be suing each other.
No.
Now, we've been through this route before where the county's suing the city and the city.
And the taxpayer pays both ends of the lawsuit.
And I get a tax bill. I pay county taxes and I pay city taxes. And it just seems to me like it's just crazy that we just keep doing this.
Well, it's because it's not their money. If it was their money, they wouldn't waste it this way. But because it's taxpayer money, they just, government looks at it like it's just an endless stream. Because guess what? With the power of a standing army, taxes are an endless stream for the government.
All right, let's look at this from another perspective. This is something they say should have been done a long time ago. This split should have been done this way. Can't they just at least talk about going forward in the future? No,
because they're scraping for every dime because they spend too much money. That's what I said a minute ago.
Well,
if they weren't spending so much money.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is it makes sense to me. They're saying that the county school system says that the city owes them $700,000. Now, this goes back to, I forget,
8, 9, 10 years.
Or even more than that, I think.
This is the same county school system that was able to put together $5 million for a fine arts building at Bradley. Once again, I know I'll get in trouble. It's a beautiful building, but it's not as important as a leaking school down at Lake Forest.
Yeah.
So that's their priority problem. And now, because of those kind of priority problems, they want every penny they can get.
Well, I guess where I'm going with this is they keep wanting to go back and do this. Well, this is something that's been going on for years. Why is it just now coming up?
Because they're always looking for any crevice or crack they can pick another penny out of.
So should they sit down as citizens of this county and this community and say, listen, if there's a mistake the way it's been done, We don't think there is. They've got clarification from the state. They said the state says there's nothing wrong with the way it's been done. Now then, the city and county need to work out some kind of a deal going forward, how they're going to split this. Either they're going to do it.
Going forward would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But we're not going forward. We're going back.
Franklin, your opinion?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you would find the middle ground.
I don't know that you can.
You would have to have both people be reasonable, and we don't have that.
You're not going to get the city to agree to cough up money out of future budgets to pay money to the county for these previous years. They're not going to agree unless somebody orders them to do that. They don't think, based upon the folks in
what Steve was saying is, why not just say a mistake was made? Let's don't talk about the old money. Let's just fix it, and from this point forward, we'll do it.
Is the mistake made is the next question.
But if you're not worried about collecting it, then it doesn't matter whether you made it or not. Let's just fix the system to where it's acceptable to both parties from this day forward. That would make sense.
Well, and that's where the city and the county are getting conflicting interpretations of the statute from each other.
They're getting it from each other?
No, from the sources that they use.
Well, no, wait a minute. The city of Cleveland got theirs from the state of Tennessee. Where did the Bradley County get theirs from?
Well, there's some indication that there's two different advisory bodies that are operated by the University of Tennessee.
Well, there's MTAS and CTAS.
That's
so you
right.
got your
You've got the Municipal Technical Advisory Service.
And then you got the counties.
County Technical Advisory Service. And this is sort of like a think tank, if you will, that provides support to governmental entities in Tennessee to help them understand legal issues and so forth. And there's some question that the county and the city are getting different interpretations.
Well, it's because CTAS is supposed to help the cities. MTAS is supposed to help the counties.
But they're both being paid for by the same group.
Once again, more screw the taxpayer. We're paying for CTAS. We're paying for MTAS. We're going to pay for the lawsuit that CTAS and MTAS recommend. So once again, no matter what happens, the taxpayer loses.
All right. Well, it looks like they're going to stir up some more crap.
The right hand is going to beat the crap out of the left hand, and the left hand is going to stab and cut the right hand.
What do you think we ought to do, Franklin? Just flip a coin?
Well,
I think we ought to quit spending so much money, and then we wouldn't be fighting over it so much.
You know, I appreciate John's diligence and sincerity about holding down government spending. I really do appreciate that. What I think is, in order to have a real discussion about that, though, we have to have real specifics.
Well, but
and by that I say that because in comparison to other communities, our taxes are lower than most communities in the state.
But that's assuming the other communities aren't too high, Franklin. That's saying
no.
Compared to Jack the Ripper, I'm a pretty nice guy.
Well, what I'm telling you is that we're on the lower end of that scale.
But the scale's too high.
No. If that's the case, then it's incumbent upon the critics to tell us where that
You're right, but here's the problem with that. I'll go back to what I started the whole conversation with, zero-based budgeting. How can you discuss the priorities when you don't even look at where you're spending it from year to year?
That's right. I think John's right about that.
I don't have a problem with that concept.
Well,
I've said that
all the elected people do.
What I'm saying is, though, you know, there's a lot of blanket statements. Government just spends too much. Okay. Tell me where we need to cut back.
And what is we need to quit loaning money to firms that are going to fail with bad technology. That'd be one place to start.
Well, I wasn't aware that the Bradley County government or the Cleveland City government
had all do it, Franklin. Government is government. It's just the scale of the problem.
I've got an idea. Why don't we have the county school board and the city school board meet out here at Lee University or somewhere in the auditorium?
Because they view themselves as adversaries.
No, wait a minute. Let's have them meet. We'll let them talk about these issues, and let's have a crowd in the audience of about 100 people take a vote on what should happen with this.
Well, that would assume that the city and the county school boards allow the public in the meetings to actually talk, and they don't. They don't allow you to address their school boards. I'll give you an example. When they were looking to cite Mayfield School, Michigan Avenue has for years been one of the best county schools in the system. And one of the reasons is because the demographics of that district, it's just a good mix.
It's a melting pot.
And so it's an excellent school. One of the city school board members said they were thinking about building the new Mayfield right on the edge of the city line out towards Michigan Avenue so that they could pull some of the Michigan Avenue students out. Now, the point here is if you're a school board member, you're supposed to be doing that because you care about the kids. Mm-hmm. So here's a city school board member saying, I'm willing to disrupt the best put together school in the county system to simply make what I think would be a really good city school. And you look at that and you go, if you cared about the kids, you would take into consideration, I don't want to disrupt Michigan Avenue because it's working great and the kids out there are getting a good education. But again, it's that us versus them mentality and not a practical, how do we make this work mentality.
All right, what is the biggest expense that we have in our budgets?
The school system.
All right. Why don't we look at combining our school systems and let them be one?
Well, my dad served on a committee back in the 80s to do that. It's getting a little bit better, but one of the problems is you can't lower the higher spending system. You have to raise the lower spending system.
Well, let's be clear about what he's talking about there. What he's talking about is wages.
Well, per pupil expenditure.
Yeah. So in the wage structure for the teachers are there, and for a long period of time, and John's right, the disparity is changing, but for a long period of time there was a significant disparity.
I mean, in the early 80s it was going to cost like $20-something million to just right at the first, because you had to bring every teacher in the county system up to the pay level of the city system. Now the problem with that is nationwide, Bill Gates looked into this, per pupil expenditure does not equal learning results. Now, and again, you get into priorities there. When you say something like that, the liberals will attack you and go, you don't want to pay teachers. No, I want to pay teachers, but maybe our priorities are out of whack and there's other places we're wasting money that we could take that money, put it in the classroom, pay the teachers more, and actually get a better result. It's like we build these. Mayfield School was the second most expensive per square foot school building in the country.
I don't know who in the world would get one any more expensive.
Do you think that a fancy building educates your child? An excellent teacher educates your child.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP.